What made you run for city council?
Well, I worked in Durham as a community organizer for a couple of years, and so that's where I got my introduction to politics at as a student in CCU. And I've watched the city grow, and I'm not really excited about the direction of our growth. And so I said, I've worked on several campaigns for other candidates. Why not do it for myself? Because I feel like I'm passionate about Durham. For me, being from rural North Carolina and Gastonia, when I came to Durham in 2005, it was the first time I ever felt like comfortable being Black. Right, because I saw so much Black rich legacy here, but the Black Wall Street in CCU, and it's like this is like, or just successful Black people, and we weren't just in one pocket of town. And so I'm like, okay, this is it's a vibe here. I really enjoy this, and so we often tout here in Durham about shared economic prosperity, and I don't see that for everyone in Durham, and I'm really troubled by a lot of the housing affordability issue. I'm on the verge of being displaced, which is what really inspired me to run for city council, because it's like, okay, I've worked hard. Have maintained my career, and to think about I can't buy a house in a city that I lived in for most of my life, it's kind of disheartening. But when I see like the crime rates or the children in our city and community that are losing their lives in childhood, that's really what got to my core. And it's like, we need someone who understands what it's like to navigate class straddling, right? I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. My great grandma was my strongest influence, and I just really want to like pour back in community. And I feel like at this point, you've tried organizing, you've worked on campaigns, you've worked for nonprofits. Now it's time for you to do the thing. And that's why I ran.
Now, I went to your website to try to get an idea of your platform and what you're trying to push. And something stood out to me. You said accountability and respect. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so accountability, respect. I'm someone every month, first and third Monday, I watch all the city council meetings like on YouTube, or I'm either in council chambers. And I'm not speaking disparagingly against any current council members, but I do feel as though sometimes that when people have differing opinions, they can become really snarky and sharp-tongued towards each other. And I think that's a poor sign of governance. It's an impediment to governance, in my opinion. But also how some of our citizens are being treated when they come to council chambers, and just the narrative formation. And I feel like we've heard people say, well, so-and-so, I reached out to you, you didn't call me back. Or you on your platform, when you were campaigning, you were all about X, Y, and Z issue, but now that you're here, you've kind of forgotten about it. And I'm like, I just don't like the way that resonates with community, right? It erodes community trust. And so you have to treat others how you want to be treated. And I feel as though just because you have a title, you're still human. And so this is not a monarchy here in Durham. You weren't born into leadership. You had to get elected to be in leadership. So you need to treat your constituents with respect, but also being accountable. Being accountable means showing up, being accessible, being responsive, all those things. And I feel like we were lacking that by some people in our current leadership apparatus. And I want to bring that back, because I feel like our city's going to grow, continue to grow. That's going to happen. But how we do it is super important to me. So I really wanted to maintain. I just didn't like some of the narratives I've watched and witnessed from week to week. And it's kind of like, that's not a really good sign. Or you're treating someone like they're less than because their pain is different. That's not okay. That's not what we do around here. So I wanted to bring back some normalcy in politics around Durham. Yes.
If I had a lot of money, I'll be in the city council meeting holding up a big blank check. You remember this? You remember this? Yeah, now you want to talk. You remember this?
Yeah.
Exactly. I have my 10-pointed jet on the back of it.
Yeah. Like,
read the back. You want this check? You read the back.
Exactly. You have all the ideas, and you have all the listening ears in the world when you're on a campaign trail. And then, like, before you even sworn in, it's like, oh, who are you? You do what? Oh, okay. Alone now. And it's like, that's not good for us in Durham. So I really kind of got tired of that, just watching how people are being treated, and just how just people with different ideas are being treated. Like, we're not a monolith. So why can we not embrace ideas from other people who don't think like us and find a compromise to move us forward? It's too much of this all or nothing strategy here now, and it's not reflective of who we are as people in Durham.
How about finding the best plan that works?
Yeah, but
is it an ego thing, or is it a power structure? Because I'm thinking about, you got an idea, I got an idea. What's the best one?
Well, I think it's dual-fold. I think it is an ego thing, but there's a lot of money in politics. So my thing for anyone is to follow the money. Who is funding which organizations, and where's the source of the money coming from? But I do think it's ego. Like, my idea is better. And it's like, but you don't have my lived experience. How can you tell me that you know what's best for me when you've never lived in communities like I've lived in? Why is your idea greater? And it's kind of like I know it gets messy in how the sausage is made, but it's how you display your disagreements that is really problematic here. Like, people can't do it and be cordial, like, okay, we have a difference in opinion. Let's try to find some common ground. It's more so like, I don't like your idea, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, that's just not cool for us. And I think that we need to get away from that. If we're going to really have tangible outcomes for the most pressing issues of our community, you got to bring people into the table.
I think if, let's say, if we ran it like a business, you wouldn't come into a corporate meeting with that type of attitude.
You wouldn't.
And you'll try to embrace those different ideas, and everyone will, okay, you present, okay, we do a huddle, let's come back. We think this is gonna be the best idea. We're gonna try this, but if it don't work,
then we're
gonna change directions.
Yeah.
Because corporations are about making a profit.
Yeah.
They gotta make a profit. So if this method don't work, we're gonna go in a different direction.
Exactly.
Real fast.
Exactly. Quickly.
we decided to pull that wasn't working. But see, politics, no, keep pushing it. Why? Because it could be, like you said, it could be money involved, money behind it, even though it doesn't work.
That's a disservice to our people when you take a national narrative that may not be our issue here in Durham and you try to make it our issue. So it's just all those things like the nonprofit industrial complex, all of these things, but it's like we have got to get to our truth here in Durham and how we address the issues that impact our community and move beyond the talking points. Everything's in a talking point. There's a thing called theory and then there's practice. You can have all the theory in the world, but you have to apply it to see if it's actually effective. And I think we don't do enough of that right now in Durham. So
yeah, because what works here might not work in Alaska.
it's not going to work.
They got different bills than they got different laws on the books than we have.
Exactly.
We don't have to worry about moose.
If I saw one, I'd be kind of like, what are you? Yeah. So you have to think about just how do you and you wouldn't know if you are not actively engaging community, right? How do you know the needs of the community if it's a class issue, it's a tension in the class here in Durham? People feel as though I know what's best for you because I have X, Y, and Z. And it's like, do you? That's just my opinion about
okay,
things.
I can get that. I can understand that. You think you know more than what's best for me, but I'm living the life that you're not living.
Exactly. So you're going to make policy for me because you know what's better for me than what I do. And then you deny me opportunity to be in space for the creation of such policy. How is that inclusive?
No. I need the best idea. I need everybody in the room.
Yeah.
So you get those different types of backgrounds and those different understandings. Because if I'm in this community, I make all this type of money. I don't know what you're dealing with. I don't live on that side of town.
Exactly.
I know your day-to-day.
If your immediate needs are satisfied, then you don't have to worry about, okay, if I go home, are my lights going to cut on because I haven't been able to pay my light bill. Or I had to determine between, okay, it's school's time, right? I had to buy my kids school shoes, or do I pay a bill? So how can you make decisions for someone in that situation when you're not living that reality? That's not okay.
Let's talk about housing affordability. You had that on your website, and I'm a real stickler about housing affordability because I see how much it cost to rent an apartment when I graduated and how much it costs now. Back then, I can rent an apartment by myself.
Yeah.
Now?
You need like 5 roommates.
A 1-bedroom, $1,400 started?
Yeah.
Who's making that type of money, especially straight out of college or even out of high school?
So that is a major. I remember last year, I get nervous every year it's time for my lease to renew because I don't know what I'm going to walk into. And so last year, if I didn't sign a 15-month lease, my rent was going to double. And I'm like, my salary is not going to double, so how's my rent going to double? So I'm like, okay, let me sign 15 months so I can at least have an incremental jump, right? And so I think what we have here in Durham is a mismatch between we have all these great employers coming. What we've got to do is make sure that people who live here have access to these great paying jobs. And that's through the transportation infrastructure, through education and skilling up. How do we offer comprehensive support so people can go and apply at the Apple that's coming? People can actually go work at Google. People can go work at Corning, which requires a high school degree to work there. Because not everyone wants to go to college, right? So we need to make sure that we have comprehensive support and people who want to skill up. Say you're a parent. How do we make sure that you have childcare to go into these training courses, right? How do we make sure you have transportation? How do we ensure you have a stipend? Because you're going to be missing out on maybe a job or opportunity or so. How do we offer support for upward mobility? I feel like we are creating more disparities with creating policy in a silo and not centering people with the issues in the policy creation. We are deepening disparities instead of helping people out. So we got to make sure housing affordability is all interconnected, but it means okay, do they have access to jobs here that are going to pay them enough to actually survive and live in Durham? That's the crux of our issue right now. And if not, how do we devise tangible outcomes to make sure they will be able to get the upward mobility? People are not asking for a handout, but we got to provide a hand up.
Hand up, yeah.
Yes.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Provide me with the tools so I can help myself.
Exactly.
I don't need you to hold my hand, but provide me with the tools so I can help myself and be a productive citizen.
Teach me how to fish. I can go get it on my own. Because that's what I learned where I'm from. It's like, yeah, it's like, give me the tool to learn how to do this on my own. I'm going to do it on my own. But don't create more barriers for me and then say, I don't know why you're not excelling.
So where do you think those barriers are coming from? Is it intentional?
I think it's that maybe the unintended harm of poor policy creation. When you create policy in a silo, you always have to think about risk to benefit. Because when I think of myself as a pragmatic, right? You have to think about like, okay, there's going to be winners and losers on every policy you create.
Right.
Who are the winners and losers? And how do we make sure that we exhaustively study what could possibly go wrong to try to mitigate the harm we're going to cause? So that's why I think that we have to be more intentional about getting away from that sensationalism. Oh, it sounds nice. We're doing a new cool thing. Yeah, it made a headline, but it's not stopping with the gun violence in this community, or it's not getting someone access to a house over here. So it sounds nice for your resume, but what does it do for their quality of life?
I want the citizens to be like, look, this is the product you put out. We don't like it. You either put something else out or you gone.
Amen.
And I'm thinking we're not keeping a report card of their progress while they're in office. It's just every 4 years now we want to think about it.
And that's the unfortunate part. And I told a group the other day, like, you got to hold people accountable. Like, you have got to, like, you elect them. Essentially, you give them power. If you gave it to them, you take it away from them, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to make sure that everyone they have the budget. The budget is every year. We just had the budget process is passed, I believe, in June or July. And so the budget is a fiscal document, and it shows where your priorities are. And so we got to make sure that our city's budget reflects what our goals are realistically here in Durham, and that we are appropriating funds to programs with tangible outcomes. That we are not just, I don't mind being innovative, but at what point we say, well, maybe that's not a good idea, it's not working for people. But the resident has people bank on, especially in municipal elections, they bank on low turnout. They hope you don't show up. They hope you don't engage, because it makes it easier for certain people, more the same, to get in office. So people have to really understand your voice is so powerful. And if you want to see change in our community, you have got to get out and exercise your right to vote to ensure that you have leaders who reflect your values and the priorities you have for your city. That's super important. You're like the shareholder, right? Use a corporate example. If shareholders aren't happy, what happens?
We're going to have a meeting. Somebody got to go.
Exactly. So it's the same thing.
So somebody's got to go.
Exactly. And so they receive a stipend for their services, so they do receive some compensation, not say it's like a full-time job for all they do, but you are investing in them as leaders. And so it's a dual fold. So you need to make sure that they know what you're feeling, and that how do you articulate that to them, and then move forward. That everyone does not have the luxury of being engaged, right? Everyone can't come to a work session meeting on Thursday at 1 p.m. Everyone can't come to a council meeting on Mondays at 7 p.m., right? So how do we become good neighbors in making sure that people in our community actually know what's happening and how it impacts them? That's what we have to do better on community end.
Yeah, need like an advocate.
Yes.
Someone to give me the cliff notes. Give me the important. But I don't want to sit down for 3 hours. give me the important stuff out of that in 5 minutes.
Exactly.
That I can digest and I can understand.
And be truthful about it. Be objective in it, so people form their own informed decision about, okay, that's what happened. This is what went down, and so make your own decision. I want people to be empowered to receive the information in ways digestible, and make the best decision for your life and your neighbors. Because you got to watch out for your neighbors as well. If my neighbor's hungry, I'm hungry too. Simply put. So.
City infrastructure. You have that on your website.
Mm-hmm.
What are your views on that?
Well, I feel as though as we continue to grow, I was speaking in relation to the quarry that it was a story, and I can't think it's Terry Quarry or so. And as we continue to grow, we got to make sure that we have safe drinking water, and that we have safe access to our roads, and our things are being maintained so that we don't diminish our quality of life for residents in our city, and making sure that we don't poison our people, right? So we continue to annex land in and build houses. It's like, okay, can we actually sustain this actual growth that we're supporting right now? Again, I'm not anti-growth. Do not take that anywhere. But making sure that we are able to grow in a way that we don't jeopardize our quality of life. So city infrastructure is super important for me. Also think about that lends itself to like our transportation lanes, but also pay for our city employees, our firefighters. We're increasing their burden through annexation, right? We're bringing more people into city limits. They were advocating for step pay this budget cycle, as well as pay that matches their tenure at the fire department, and they didn't receive what they really wanted. That's problematic if you think about like our city employees not being compensated. What does it say about us as an employer? What does it say about our ability to attract, retain, train people to come to our city and do these services for us, right? So we gotta think about how we are as an employer and how we're being a good steward of city funds. So think about what growth really looks like. We have a comprehensive plan coming out, making sure that we are following through what the community has suggested through the comprehensive plan. I think over 1,000 folks were engaged. So it's really important to think about how do we grow.
What makes you different than the current city council members?
Well, I have a unique experience, right? So I grew up in the 90s, and I think people forget sometimes what it was like to grow up in the crack cocaine epidemic and some of the traumas that we saw. Especially like my great grandmother was like my primary caregiver, and so I have a strong sense of community, and I won't ever forget that. I can accept the fact that I may be wrong sometimes on things, or I'm always willing to learn. So what makes me different is I'm my authentic self. I authentically show up in community, I authentically engage people, I genuinely care about people. And so that, and also I'm passionate about moving us all forward together. I don't want to leave one person behind. And I feel like that's what makes me different, because it was hard growing up in the 90s. Like we saw a lot of things like dead bodies and all kind of things because of gun violence in our communities, and you don't forget that stuff. And I don't want the kids in our community to go through the same trauma that we went through and grow up in those environments, right? And so I think that lens is missing. And I'm not trying to talk about someone's life story, but for me personally, that has helped frame who I am today. And I know that, especially with our children, you have a short amount of time before kids become discouraged. And I want to ensure that no child has to go through the trauma we went through in the 90s, and that they know that it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And how do we move forward? And also just how I interact with people. I feel like you have to treat people how you want to be treated. You cannot talk down on people or anything because you think differently. And I think that's a tone that we have in council, that if you have a difference of opinion, then like I got to find some way to take a shot at you or bash you. And that's not who I am. And so I really think that those experiences of having to get it out the mud essentially have made me realize and appreciate my social safety net, my community, and people who help me out. So that's what makes me different.
Now, if you get in and you don't do what you're supposed to,
come find me. I'm not hard to find.
We're going to holler at you.
I mean, I'm always down for the calls. I screen phone calls, but I will call you back though to figure out who you are. No,
you call, yeah.
Yeah.
You know me, I'll be on the air and call you.
No. So remember that time you said, like,
Shanetta, what's up? Let me holler at you. This house from the radio station. Oh, yeah, you on air now. You gonna hang up on me?
Like, yes.
You gonna hang up on me? I sent you the questions ahead of time, so I ain't trying to throw you off guard. What's up?
Okay, the question ahead of time, I'll be cool. Like,
okay.
What?
Yeah, you gotta be. I gotta be the research the issue now. Just let me know.
Yes. So note to self: always answer your phone calls. Cool. All right, so we got that.
Yeah. What's the best plan that's going to make the city successful? And I think we just start doing report cards, and you can be the advocate and say, hey, this what happened in city council. I'm gonna wrap it up and tell you what happened in 5 minutes.
Yes.
And you'll be surprised when people don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you just gonna break. I'm gonna give you the nitty gritty. This what the local news ain't gonna give to you. Like I'm gonna give it to you.
No, we don't have a lot of reporting sources, but they used to have a thing called Coffee at Council, right? Where you can actually go out and sit with a counselor and have coffee with them. So I think for us, it's about, we do need a community organization that is going to hold council members accountable. And this is your campaign platform. This is what you said you're going to do. Be realistic in the timeline, right? Because it's like, it takes 4 votes to pass things. But you have an individual who's an individual record. How they try to work and compromise to create this change in this issue. And so I think that's really important, but also it's kind of like, if you do not engage with people, then you don't know. So we got to stop making assumptions. And so elected council is kind of like, because I would be at large. So I'm all over. I want to be in relationship with people from all over to know, like, what are your concerns and how can I best address this for you? But how can we do it together? Because I can't make decisions. I'm not a parent. I only have a cat, and I don't even know how that's working out right now. So I can't make decisions for people who have children, right, and who live in certain conditions. I can't make decisions for you, but I want you to be with me as I can advocate for you and do it authentically. So I think that's what's really missing in Durham right now, is that willingness to be a part of the solution and not exacerbate the problem. Because I think the tone that I have noticed in being an organizer and an advocate is that some folks will create their own problems just to kind of pretend to be the savior. And it's like, well, if you didn't do that in the first place, then we wouldn't be where we're at right now. And I'm tired of it.
If I win the lottery, I want to be a developer, okay? We're going to make a whole lot of affordable housing, not to rent, you can own.
Yes.
Convert some of these apartments into condos.
Yes. Like, I mean, there's so many, a variety of strategies, right? Like allowing churches to lease their land because churches provide a service in our community. So don't have them sell it for a one-time payment. It's like, no, lease it out for the production of affordable housing. You make money, but also you provide someone, again, a hand up and not a handout by having housing. So we got to think about innovative. And it's like people pretend as though we haven't done affordable housing. There's not models that exist. There are. Just gotta read and find them, right? And figure out how do you make that fit Durham in our current landscape. We can't proffer our way out of our affordability crisis. You can't. So we've got to be intentional about public-private partnerships, addressing corporate landlords. There are people in our city right now who pay rent and live in absolute squalor. I've heard the stories.
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure that people have a sound place to go home to, and actually, like, we will address other issues by starting with housing. Such a reality for us. And the thing I always realize is that I'm fortunate because my great-grandmother raised me, she said, you know, if you keep our house, you'll always have a home. So with that, knowing that we have ownership in our family, if life gets tough, I can go home. I might have to sleep on the couch, and it's old, but still, I can go home. So that's a privilege that you have, right? Thinking about, like, okay, if everything gets tough, I can go back to my daddy's house now and just figure it out there. You meet people out here who say, like, you know, my mama died and I had nowhere to go. So I'm out here sleeping in abandoned houses. Or you hear the stories, and it's like, how can you hear someone's story and not feel compelled to do something?
When politicians say housing affordability, are they talking about rent, or are they talking about home ownership, or it's a combination of the both?
Well, I'm not a politician. I'm a community advocate, so I would fight back against that.
Okay.
But no, it's both, though, because not everyone wants to own a home. Or people may be transient, right? We have 2 universities here. You have NCCU, where you have a lot of first-year college students. Can you imagine being your freshman in college, or I'll say senior, right, and trying to pay $1,500 rent? Seriously. Like, think about that. Or you think, so I think it's a mix between making sure you have affordability and renters, but also we need to have pathways for home ownership. You have city employees through the budget hearing, talked about they can't even afford to buy a house here in Durham because I think the guy in his story was like, you know, I only got approved for a $200,000 loan. What house can I buy in Durham for $200K? So we've got to figure out a reality for a combination of both. We need to increase the production of affordable housing, both for home ownership and both for rentals, to ensure that our students or people who just don't, everyone doesn't want a yard to mow, you know? Everyone has their own thing, but how do we ensure that everyone has like a opportunity to pick between what they want and what's best for their budget, instead of it all being unaffordable? Like, I used to want to buy a house in Durham. It was a beautiful dream. It's been deferred. Yeah. Unless I bought it in like 87 when I was born. I don't know.
I want to thank you for coming in and giving us a good chat about what's going on. And we hope that you make it on the other side.
I hope so too, but early voting starts on September 21st. You can vote at any of the county's 5 early voting precincts, so please go to DCO Votes for more information about that. And if you want to learn more about my campaign and my platform, please visit Shanetta, 4, Durham.com. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in today.
It's all good.
Thank you.